My wife was dead, yet her real life was still going on with another man. For 20 years, I stood by my wife and her family. Our marriage was close, loving, and seemingly unbreakable. We had a son and a daughter, and from the outside, our life looked perfect. No regrets, no cracks, or so I thought. Then she drowned. Her sudden death shattered me. Grief consumed everything. Tears followed me like a shadow I couldn't escape. While sorting through her belongings, I came across something strange, a property deed for a house I didn't recognize. Curiosity overcame me, and I went to the address listed. What I found there crushed me. The house was elegant, warm, luxurious, nothing like the cramped apartment we had lived in for decades. On the wall hung a portrait of my wife, standing beside her first love. Below it were photos of their twin children. It felt like a knife to my chest. On the desk lay a hastily written letter. Kenji, since you're gone, life has become unbearable. I can't take this pain anymore. The kids are with Hiro now. I hope he takes good care of them. No regrets. Let's meet again in the afterlife, together forever. Rage exploded inside me. My money, all of it, went to them. And now I was supposed to be grateful? I staggered back, drowning in betrayal. My mind burned with a single thought: dig up her grave and demand answers. But the anger overwhelmed me. Everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was 10 years younger, back in the 10th year of our marriage. That same night, the police called. They said they had found my wife, Yuki, in the West Lake Reservoir. I was still at work, past 10 p.m., exhausted, over 40, dealing with health issues, yet pushing myself like a mule for a demanding client. At first, I thought it was a scam. Stop wasting my time, I snapped. But the officer calmly gave his badge number and explained that fishermen had found a woman's body, identified by her ID as my wife. He asked me to come immediately. Doubt crept in as I hung up. I called Yuki again and again on the way there. Her phone was off. 40 minutes later, I arrived. The night was pitch black. Only rushing water and distant animal cries broke the silence. I followed a single beam of light to the riverbank. Her body lay there. She was wearing her favorite black dress, now soaked and filthy. Her shoes were gone. Her bare feet were badly cut. Blood stained her face in eerie streaks. When I saw her face, my body froze. It was her. It was Yuki. After a full investigation, autopsy, surveillance footage, the police ruled out foul play. Alcohol was found in her system. The conclusion: accidental drowning while intoxicated. When our children heard the news, they rushed back from abroad. I collapsed repeatedly from high blood pressure and ended up in the ICU. By the time I was discharged, Yuki had already been buried. When the kids took me to her grave, I was stunned. She was buried next to her ex-husband, Hiro. They had divorced over 20 years ago. I stared at my children in disbelief. My daughter, Mia, spoke calmly, almost indifferently. This was Mom's wish. She left a will. The lawyer gave it to us when we returned. My hands trembled as I read it. It was all true. Yuki wanted to be buried with Hiro. Mia continued. All insurance payouts go to me and David. Her personal assets from before marrying you are also ours. As for the house, Mom left you her 50%, but you'll need to buy out our half at market value or sell it and split the money. She added flatly, "We've got our green cards. Once this is settled, we won't be coming back. Take care." I looked at the children I had raised for 20 years. My throat tightened. "How can you be so heartless?" I whispered. I had married Yuki for 20 years. I raised David and Mia from the time they were 5. I loved her, cared for her parents, paid for overseas education, covered dialysis costs, drained my savings, often leaving myself with only a few $100s left each month. I always told myself things would get better. Now I realized the truth. I had been nothing more than a tool. Back home, the apartment looked exactly the same. Old, cramped, worn down. We had lived here for nearly 20 years. I bought the apartment after our marriage, paid a hefty dowry, and even added Yuki's name to the deed without hesitation. 5 people had squeezed into less than 80 square meters for years. I began packing her things. In her wardrobe, I found an old magazine. Inside was a faded copy of a property deed with Yuki listed as the owner. I hired a locksmith and went there. The moment the door opened, I knew. This was Yuki and Hiro's love nest. Photos covered the walls of them and of their twins growing up. The decor was lavish: plush carpets, expensive furniture, a chandelier glittered overhead. Nothing like the life I lived. In the study, family photos chronicled years of happiness: elementary school, university, trips around the world. I stood there, numb. Suddenly, everything made sense. Yuki once told me her financial skills kept our household afloat. I even thanked her. But it was my money. All of it. They had taken everything. On the desk lay another handwritten note, addressed to Hiro. This wasn't an accident. It was suicide, born from love. I tore the letter into shreds. I don't know how long I sat there before stumbling out, filled with a single furious thought: dig up her grave. Then blood poured from my mouth. My vision darkened. I collapsed. When I opened my eyes again, I was 10 years younger, back in the 10th year of our marriage. That same night, the police called. They said they had found my wife, Yuki, in the West Lake Reservoir. I was still at work, past 10 p.m., exhausted, over 40, dealing with health issues, yet pushing myself like a mule for a demanding client. At first, I thought it was a scam. "Stop wasting my time," I snapped. But the officer calmly gave his badge number and explained that fishermen had found a woman's body, identified by her ID as my wife. He asked me to come immediately. Doubt crept in as I hung up. I called Yuki again and again on the way there. Her phone was off. 40 minutes later, I arrived. The night was pitch black. Only rushing water and distant animal cries broke the silence. I followed a single beam of light to the riverbank. Her body lay there. She was wearing her favorite black dress, now soaked and filthy. Her shoes were gone. Her bare feet were badly cut. Blood stained her face in eerie streaks. When I saw her face, my body froze. It was her. It was Yuki. After a full investigation, autopsy, surveillance footage, the police ruled out foul play. Alcohol was found in her system. The conclusion: accidental drowning while intoxicated. When our children heard the news, they rushed back from abroad. I collapsed repeatedly from high blood pressure and ended up in the ICU. By the time I was discharged, Yuki had already been buried. When the kids took me to her grave, I was stunned. She was buried next to her ex-husband, Hiro. They had divorced over 20 years ago. I stared at my children in disbelief. My daughter, Mia, spoke calmly, almost indifferently. This was Mom's wish. She left a will. The lawyer gave it to us when we returned. My hands trembled as I read it. It was all true. Yuki wanted to be buried with Hiro. Mia continued, "All insurance payouts go to me and David. Her personal assets from before marrying you are also ours. As for the house, Mom left you her 50%, but you'll need to buy out our half at market value or sell it and split the money." She added flatly, "We've got our green cards. Once this is settled, we won't be coming back. Take care." I looked at the children I had raised for 20 years. My throat tightened. "How can you be so heartless?" I whispered. I had married Yuki for 20 years. I raised David and Mia from the time they were 5. I loved her, cared for her parents, paid for overseas education, covered dialysis costs, drained my savings, often leaving myself with only a few $100s left each month. I always told myself things would get better. Now I realized the truth. I had been nothing more than a tool. Back home, the apartment looked exactly the same. Old, cramped, worn down. We had lived here for nearly 20 years. I bought the apartment after our marriage, paid a hefty dowry, and even added Yuki's name to the deed without hesitation. 5 people had squeezed into less than 80 square meters for years. I began packing her things. In her wardrobe, I found an old magazine. Inside was a faded copy of a property deed with Yuki listed as the owner. I hired a locksmith and went there. The moment the door opened, I knew. This was Yuki and Hiro's love nest. Photos covered the walls of them and of their twins growing up. The decor was lavish. George, he said calmly, there's no need to bring up the past. You're Yuki's husband now. Think of the children. I looked at David and Mia. Their eyes burned with hatred, and in that moment I remembered how coldly they would abandon me in the end. At the cemetery, they waved Yuki's will in my face, pressuring me to sell the house and split the money with them. I let out a bitter laugh. Their real father isn't dead, I said coldly. What right do I have to call myself their dad? If he were dead, maybe then we could talk. Hiro froze, stammering in disbelief. How can you say something like that? He turned toward Yuki, frowning. For a brief moment, resentment flashed across her eyes. She grabbed my sleeve again, pulling me back and whispering sharply, George, what's wrong with you? Everyone's watching. Do you really want people to look down on us? I turned to face her, hatred surging so strongly it nearly swallowed me whole. Sensing the tension, one of the guests hurried over to smooth things out. Professor Lin, come on, tell me, how do you usually communicate with your children? My son keeps failing his exams. Gradually, the noise returned. The awkwardness faded, at least on the surface. I sank back into my chair, my gaze icy as I scanned the room. My chest felt tight with rage. I poured myself another drink and swallowed it in one gulp. I knew the smartest choice would be to divorce Yuki, cut ties with this parasitic family, and start over. But after being deceived for an entire lifetime, how could I just walk away and let the hatred go? The banquet eventually ended. One by one, the guests left, until only Yuki, her mother, Hiro, and the twins remained with me. My mother-in-law's shrill voice shattered the silence. George, you may not care about saving face, but we do. What's with this pathetic display? Are you proud of your past? Getting into fights? Breaking your leg? How disgraceful! Serves you right. Why didn't you reflect on yourself back then? She sneered. Even if you were a millionaire, no one in our family would take you seriously. You're nothing but useless. You're not worthy of our Yuki. Yuki cut in quickly. Mom, stop it. George is a victim here. Why do you have to say such things? I looked at my mother-in-law. Strong, energetic, full of life. Back then, she hadn't been diagnosed with kidney failure. She didn't need weekly dialysis. She didn't need someone to cook for her, bathe her, cater to every need. In my previous life, after her diagnosis, Yuki developed a phobia of hospitals and left everything to me. For nearly 8 years, rain or shine, I drove her mother to the hospital every Saturday. She passed away peacefully just 2 months before Yuki's suicide. Thinking of Yuki's farewell letter, where she wrote about fulfilling her filial duty, I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. What duty? I did everything. Cold laughter escaped me as I said, if I weren't so useless, do you think I would have even looked at Yuki? Do you think your daughter is exceptional? Even her associate professorship was handed to her. If my father hadn't pulled strings for her recommendation, she'd still be a junior lecturer. I looked around sharply. Don't act righteous while playing the victim. You're all hypocrites. My words froze the room. My mother-in-law turned pale, her face twisting with fury. She trembled, too angry to speak.
Yuki stared at me, wounded. "George, are you sick? All this because Louis said a few words about you?" Mia raised her voice angrily. "This was supposed to be mine and David's celebration banquet. What's so great about being you that you had to bring up those embarrassing things? How am I supposed to face my classmates now? Why do you always ruin everything?" I took a deep breath, forcing the rage down. Turning to Yuki, I said calmly, "You're right. I am sick. Do you have a cure?" Then, coldly, "Let me say this one last time. If he ever calls me that again, I'll make sure he spends the rest of his life in a wheelchair." I shifted my gaze to Mia. "And you? Who are you to me? Whether you can hold your head up in front of your classmates has nothing to do with me. You're short, unattractive, and those flared nostrils, honestly, letting you take my last name was humiliating. Who should I complain about that for?" Mia froze, stunned. Though she and David were twins, they looked nothing alike. David resembled his father. Mia took after her grandmother. Her composure shattered. She burst into tears and ran out of the banquet hall. I had no interest in continuing. I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack and left without another word. Outside, the sky was completely dark. A faint summer breeze carried a slight coolness, though the air still clung to my skin. I kicked a pebble as I walked, my thoughts spiraling into chaos. Memories flooded, suffocating me. In my second year of high school, I was bullied after rejecting a classmate's confession. One night, a group of thugs ambushed me on my way home. Back then, security was poor, and many alleys had no cameras. They demanded I kneel and apologize. I fought back. In the struggle, I kicked their leader hard. Enraged, he slammed me to the ground and struck me repeatedly with a steel rod. When they were done, they dumped me beside a trash bin. My parents searched all night. By the time I was found and rushed to the hospital, it was too late. The injuries left me permanently disabled. When the doctor broke the news, my mother fainted. My father's hair turned white almost overnight. The gang leader sentenced to 10 years, but the damage was irreversible. I spent 3 months on a catheter and an entire year in rehabilitation before I could function again. From then on, I became withdrawn, filled with self-loathing. I refused to date, convinced I didn't deserve love. Then I met Yuki. She felt like a beacon of light in my darkness. I thought she was my salvation, the star that would guide me out of despair. So I gave everything to our marriage. I endured her mother's cruelty. I tolerated the resentment of her children, fueled by their grandmother and biological father. I worked tirelessly to keep the peace. I believed the marriage was worth it. I never imagined that Yuki, the light in my life, was actually the shadow behind it all, the hand dragging me into the abyss. By the time I got home, it was nearly midnight. The house was dark. Everyone had gone to bed. A faint rustling sound came from the balcony. I turned on the light and stepped closer. There sat a bamboo basket covered with mesh. The sound came from inside. My blood ran cold. Inside were venomous snakes. The scene was disturbingly familiar. In my previous life, after David and Mia's exam results came out, my mother-in-law claimed her prayers to Buddha had been answered. She somehow obtained more than a dozen venomous snakes, planning to release them in the mountains as a ritual. I had strongly objected, suggesting releasing carp instead. She scoffed, saying animals released in rituals couldn't be eaten later. She wanted carp for food, not for prayer. Unable to reason with her, I took the snakes to a wildlife rescue center while she was out. The staff were horrified. It was full of protected, highly venomous, banded snakes. The police were called. I endured hours of criticism and had to sign a written guarantee before leaving. She accused me of ruining her spiritual progress. This time, I didn't interfere. The next morning, she came home with breakfast and loudly instructed Yuki, "Go wake the kids. We're taking them to the mountain for the release ceremony." Yuki frowned. Mom, can't you stop involving the kids in these superstitious rituals? My mother-in-law snapped. If I hadn't prayed to Buddha, do you think the kids would have done so well? Or that George could earn money? It's all Buddha's blessing. Yuki fell silent. After breakfast, I took the documents I had prepared, IDs, marriage certificate, household registration, and left. I went straight to the real estate registry. As expected, the second property was under Yuki's name, registered 3 years ago, the same year Haro returned to the country. The mortgage had been paid off just 2 months earlier. Shortly after, my office phone rang. David's panicked voice came through. Dad, please come quickly. Grandma was bitten by venomous snakes during the release ceremony. She passed out. I can't carry her. We're halfway up South Hill near the big boulder. Mom's phone isn't working. Dad, I'm scared. The snakes are everywhere. His scream sent chills through me. I instinctively reached for my phone to dial 911, then froze. Surely the Buddha she prayed to would protect her, wouldn't he? I lowered my hand. David, I said calmly, I'm out of town. Call your mom or dial 911. There was silence. Then he said softly, Dad, I'm calling your office landline. I paused, then replied, I'm about to leave on a trip. The cab's already waiting. I can't help you. Good luck. I hung up and turned off my phone. David was about to start high school, but the prognosis was devastating. I showed up at the hospital 3 days after the incident, claiming I'd been out of town. I had to keep up the act. The moment Yuki saw me, she nearly screamed. Her voice was shrill enough to make my ears ring. Where have you been these past few days? Why couldn't I reach you? David was bitten by a snake. You called him and you didn't rush over. If you'd brought the rescue team sooner, if the antivenom had arrived in time, things wouldn't be this bad. I can't rely on you for anything. I glanced at the 2 patients lying in the hospital beds, one half conscious, the other staring blankly at the ceiling. I sighed. I was sent out of town on an emergency assignment. My phone was stolen as soon as I arrived. How was I supposed to know something happened at home? Then I countered sharply. Wait a minute. I told David to contact you immediately. Didn't you go help them? What kind of mother are you? Yuki froze. Her hysteria drained from her face. I pressed on, feigning anger and disappointment. One of them is your own mother. The other is your child. How could you be so cold-blooded? And now you have the nerve to blame me? What exactly were you doing that was more important than saving your mother and child? Guilt flickered across her face, and her tone softened. I didn't mean to blame you. You disappeared for 3 days. I was worried. I was just too upset. She paused, then added, Now that you're here, can you stay and help take care of Mom and David? I need to go home and shower. I refused outright. No, I've got a mountain of work waiting at the office. Hire a nurse. She bit her lip, clearly displeased, but eventually nodded. David was discharged before my mother-in-law, but something in him had changed. He developed severe post-traumatic stress. He woke up screaming from nightmares and avoided anywhere with dense greenery. Even the sound of leaves rustling in the wind made him cover his ears and cry out in terror. Watching him like that stirred a complicated mix of feelings. Once, I had truly loved David and Mia as my own. But now, if anyone was to blame, it was his grandmother's Buddha for failing to protect him. By mid-July, high school registration began. David's condition made attending impossible, so I went to the school and filed for a leave of absence. Given his excellent exam results, it was quickly approved. When I handed David the certificate, he covered his face and broke down in tears. Perhaps he realized this leave was only an illusion. He would never return to that prestigious school. I sighed silently. This was the last thing I could do for him. I put our old apartment on the market. Though it was cramped and outdated, it sat in a good school district and could have been sold for 500 to 600,000 yen. but I had already arranged a buyer who would take it for just 300,000 yen. The day before my mother-in-law was discharged, I checked myself into the same hospital. For years, my salary card had been kept by Yuki. I had always lived frugally, never asking her for money, so when I asked her for the hospital deposit, she was stunned.
"You have to be hospitalized now?" she asked irritably. "Who's going to take care of my mom after she's discharged?" I handed her the paperwork and explained that a lung nodule had been found. It was small, but pressed against my trachea, causing persistent coughing. The doctor recommended immediate surgery. In my previous life, I delayed it for 3 months. This time, I scheduled it right away. Yuki clenched her jaw, clearly furious, but in the end, she maintained her dutiful wife facade and handed me my salary card. I called my cousin, who was home for summer break, and asked him to stay with me for a few days. The day after surgery, while my cousin went downstairs for lunch, Yuki came into my room carrying several documents. She asked me to sign them. I was weak, groggy, barely able to eat, but she insisted. She said a friend of hers had lost her job and was now selling insurance. Buying a few short-term policies would help her meet her quota. "It's cheap, just 1 or 200 yen per policy," she said sweetly. "Just sign at the bottom. I'll handle the rest." She even pulled out her phone, preparing to record the moment. Just then, my cousin returned. Seeing Yuki pressing papers into my hands, he frowned. "Sis, what's so urgent that my brother has to sign this now? He just had surgery. Can he even read this properly? Let me take a look first." Yuki quickly snatched the documents back, forcing a stiff smile. "Oh, I forgot. He just had surgery. We'll wait a few days." She left in a hurry. My cousin muttered suspiciously, half joking, "You're not sneaking in a loan agreement or something shady, are you?" Yuki's face went pale. "What nonsense are you talking about?" she snapped, then fled in embarrassment. The next day, during my walk for recovery, my cousin pushed me in a wheelchair through the hospital garden. After 10 minutes, we sat behind an artificial hill to rest. That's when I heard a familiar voice. "Hiro, I'll come over tonight. Why did you come to the hospital so early?" I followed the sound. Yuki was leaning into Hiro's arms, holding a thermos. Hiro frowned. "I hate that you spent 2 hours making chicken soup for him. Does he even deserve it?" Yuki giggled. "Are you jealous? Besides, I've only brought him food twice. You wouldn't want him to get seriously ill and leave my mom and the kids without support, right?" Hiro scoffed. "Why would I take on that burden? Let him spend his money raising my kids. A free ride is better." Then he asked, "Did you get him to sign the house transfer agreement?" "Not yet," Yuki pooted. "That cousin ruined it. I'll find another chance." Hiro laughed. "Take your time." He tasted the soup, grimaced, and spat it back. "This is awful. Give it to your dear husband." Yuki smiled and said she'd cook him something better later. When they left, my cousin was shaking with rage. "I want to kill them," he cried. I patted his back gently. "No, that would be too easy. I want them to live." After my discharge, I learned Yuki had temporarily placed her mother in a care home, no doubt planning to dump her back on me once I recovered. The apartment sale went through. When Yuki protested, I calmly maneuvered her into signing a notarized agreement declaring all her investments as marital property. She panicked and signed. The apartment sold for 300,000 yen. I immediately funneled the money into cryptocurrency through a friend, ensuring it became a total loss in my name. Then I moved everything into Hiro's luxury apartment. In front of David, I called the police and a locksmith, presenting documents proving the property was marital property. Hiro arrived furious, but was forced out. Yuki was powerless. 2 days earlier, I'd already sent evidence of her affair and misconduct to her university and the education authority. She knelt before me, begging. I watched silently. The real storm hadn't even begun. I exposed her plagiarism. Her papers were retracted. She was fired.
Her mother died shortly after. Yuki fell into the West Lake Reservoir and lost her leg. We divorced. I kept the house and the car. Free at last, I quit my job, bought a camper van, and traveled. I filmed everything. Unexpectedly, the videos took off. 2 years later, I bought a villa, adopted a cat and a dog, and filled my garden with flowers. One evening, while walking my dog, a trembling voice called out behind me. "Dad." I turned. It was David. I smiled gently. "I'm not your dad anymore. You can call me Uncle." He broke down in tears. I walked on. In my mind, I saw 2 small children years ago hugging me and shouting happily, "We have a dad now." How had everything come to this?